Humans are terrifying because they know better and still do it. Part 1 Ambassador. HFY had studied humans for 3 galactic cycles. That was almost 15 Earth years, which the insectoid diplomat had learned was considered a very long time by human standards. Humans lived short lives. They grew old quickly. They died easily. These were simple facts that every species in the collective understood. What no one understood was why humans acted the way they did. HFY stood in the observation room of the mining vessel Defiant Hope, watching through reinforced glass as the human crew went about their work. The ship was old and tired, held together by patches and prayers, as the humans liked to say. It drifted through an asteroid field at the edge of known space, pulling precious metals from dead rocks. The work was dangerous. The pay was bad. The humans did it anyway. The ambassador had been assigned to observe human behavior in extreme conditions. This seemed like a good place to start. What HFY did not expect was to witness something that would change everything they thought they knew about this strange species. The alarm started screaming at exactly 14 minutes. Past the 3rd shift change, red lights flooded the corridors. A calm voice spoke over the speakers, explaining in simple terms that the reactor was failing. Radiation levels were climbing. Everyone had 14 minutes to reach the escape pods. This was more than enough time. The humans had planned for emergencies like this. They had drilled for them. Everything was going to be fine as long as everyone followed the rules. HFY watched the crew begin moving toward the pods. They were calm. They were organized. This was good. This was exactly how a rational species should behave when faced with danger. Get to safety. Survive. Live to work another day. Then Chief Engineer Marcus Chun stopped walking. He was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been working on this ship for 12 years. HFY had interviewed him once and found him to be quiet and thoughtful. He seemed like someone who understood how things worked, both machines and people. Marcus Chun looked at a datapad in his hand. He looked at the corridor leading to the escape pods. He looked back at the datapad. Then he turned around and started walking toward the reactor room. HFY felt their wings twitch in confusion. This was wrong. This was not how things were supposed to happen. The reactor room was exactly where no one should be going. The radiation levels there were already dangerous and getting worse every second. Chief Chen, the ambassador, called out through the communication system. The escape pods are in the other direction. Marcus Chen did not stop walking. I know, he said. The radiation in the reactor room will kill you. Probably, he agreed. 3 other humans stopped walking toward the pods. They looked at Marcus Chun. They looked at each other. Then, without a word, they turned and followed him toward the reactor room. HFY tried to understand what was happening. These humans knew the danger. They had been told exactly how bad things were. They understood radiation. They understood death. They had seen the numbers on their datapads, the same numbers the ambassador had seen. Lethal exposure in 6 minutes. Possible lethal exposure in 4. And still they walked toward it. What are you doing? HFY demanded. Marcus Chun finally stopped. He turned to face the observation camera, and there was something in his eyes that the ambassador had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not ignorance. It was something else entirely. I can fix it, he said. The reactor. I've seen this problem before. If I can get to the manual override, I can stop the meltdown. The ship won't have to be abandoned. The cargo won't be lost. The company won't go bankrupt. All these people won't lose their jobs. But you will die. Maybe. He smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. Maybe not. I've been doing this a long time, Ambassador. I know my way around a reactor. The probability of survival is less than 12%. So there's a chance. He turned and kept walking. The three other humans followed him. Ket Viren watched them go, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to understand. The ambassador monitored their progress through the ship's internal sensors. They watched Marcus Chun and his volunteers enter the reactor room. They watched the radiation numbers climb. They watched the humans work, their hands steady, their movements precise, even as their bodies began to absorb lethal doses of energy. 11 minutes passed. The alarm kept screaming. The radiation kept climbing. Then, with 43 seconds to spare, the reactors stabilized. Marcus Chun's voice came over the communication system, weak but clear. "Told you I could fix it." The other crew members cheered. They gathered around the escape pods that they no longer needed. They hugged each other and laughed and cried. They were alive. The ship was saved. Everything was going to be okay. But not for everyone. Marcus Chun died 6 days later in the medical bay. The radiation had been too much. His body had absorbed more than any human could survive. The doctors kept him comfortable. His friends came to visit. They told jokes and shared stories and pretended that everything was normal. Ket Viren visited him once, near the end. The ambassador found him lying in bed, pale and thin, connected to machines that beeped softly in the quiet room. "Why?" Ket Viren asked. "You knew what would happen. You knew you would die. Why did you do it?" Marcus Chun looked at the ambassador with eyes that were still calm, still thoughtful, even now. "Because someone had to," he said. "And I was the one who could." He died the next morning. The collective's report on the incident was classified at the highest level. A new warning was attached to all files related to human behavior. It read, "Cognitively hazardous behavioral template. Do not emulate." Ket Viren did not understand what that meant until much later. The Galactic Assembly met once every 100 cycles to discuss matters of great importance. Wars, trade agreements, the discovery of new species, things that affected everyone in the known universe. It was rare for a single incident to bring the assembly together outside of its normal schedule. It was even more rare for that incident to involve a species as young as humanity. But here they were. 12 elder species sat in the Great Hall, their representatives arranged in a perfect circle. The Vel were there, their crystalline bodies catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. The Korath attended through holographic projection, their massive forms too large to fit in any building made by smaller races. The Pale Ones sat in shadow, as they always did, their featureless faces turned toward the center of the room, and in that center stood Ambassador Ket Viren, wings folded tight against their back, waiting to be questioned. "We have reviewed your report," the eldest Vel delegate said. Their voice chimed like bells, beautiful and cold. "We do not understand it." "I am happy to explain," Ket Viren replied. "Please do. Because what you describe does not match any known behavioral model. The human you observed, this Marcus Chun, he knew he would die. Yes, he had access to accurate data about the radiation levels. Yes, he understood the medical consequences of exposure completely, and yet he went anyway." Ket Viren nodded. "That is correct." The assembly fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. The Korath hologram flickered as the massive beings conferred among themselves across the void of space. The Pale Ones whispered in their strange hissing language. Finally, the Vel delegate spoke again. "This behavior makes no sense. Every sapient species in the galaxy has survival instincts. Every species seeks to protect itself. That is the foundation of intelligence. That is why we build ships and weapons and walls. To survive. Humans have those instincts too," Ket Viren said. Then why did he ignore them? The ambassador had thought about this question for a very long time. They had reviewed every piece of data they had collected. They had consulted with experts on human psychology. They had even talked to humans themselves, asking them to explain their own behavior. The answers they received had not helped at all. "Because they can," Kethveren said at last. "Humans have the ability to understand danger and choose to face it anyway. They can hold two truths in their minds at the same time. They can know something will kill them and still decide it is worth doing. That is not possible. And yet, I watched it happen." A Karath representative rumbled through the hologram, their voice deep and slow. "You speak of irrationality, defective thinking. Perhaps this human was damaged. Perhaps his brain did not function correctly." Kethveren's wings twitched. That was my first thought as well. So I researched further. I found thousands of similar incidents in human history. Millions of them. Humans who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans who jumped into freezing water to rescue drowning children. Humans who stepped between their friends and danger, knowing they would be hurt or killed. These are isolated cases. Defects in the species. No, they give awards for this behavior. They build statues to honor the humans who die this way. They teach their children stories about heroes who sacrifice themselves. This is not a defect. This is considered the highest form of human virtue. The assembly fell silent again. This time, the silence lasted even longer. Finally, one of the pale ones stepped forward into the light. Their voice was soft and dry, like leaves scraping against stone. "We have encountered many strange species in our time. Some were dangerous because they were strong. Some were dangerous because they were fast. Some were dangerous because they bred quickly or thought cleverly or had natural weapons built into their bodies. But we have never encountered a species that was dangerous because of how they thought about dying." Kethveren nodded slowly. "That is what I have been trying to explain. Tell us more. Tell us about the other incidents you found." So the ambassador told them. They told them about the colony ship Horizon, which had lost power in deep space. The ship was drifting toward a star, slowly but surely being pulled to its death. The solar collectors that could have saved them were damaged, knocked out of alignment by debris. Someone needed to go outside and fix them. But the ship's spacesuits were old and weak. They would fail long before any rescue could arrive. 17 humans volunteered anyway. They walked out into the void, one by one, knowing they would never come back. They fixed the collectors. They saved 3,000 lives. And then they died, one by one, as their suits gave out and the cold of space took them. The survivors were interviewed afterward, Kethveren said. They were asked why the volunteers had done it. One woman's response was recorded and analyzed. The translators tried to convert it into Galactic Standard, but 14 languages had no equivalent words. The closest translation was, "Someone had to." So they did. The pale one tilted their head. They knew they would die. Yes, they did not believe they would be rescued. No, they simply decided that saving others was worth their own lives. Yes. The pale one looked at the other delegates. Something passed between them, some understanding that Kethveren could not quite follow. "We have made an error," the pale one said. "We have been classifying humans as a young species, primitive, undeveloped. We assumed they would grow out of this behavior as they matured. We were wrong." "What do you mean?" the Vel delegate asked. "This is not immaturity. This is something else entirely. Something we do not have. Something we may never understand." The pale one turned to face Kethveren directly. "Continue your observations, Ambassador. Learn everything you can, because I believe we are going to need that knowledge very soon." Kethveren did not understand what the pale one meant, but they would. Soon enough, everyone would dot Part 3. The Dominion came without warning. Their ships appeared at the edge of the frontier, territories on a quiet morning when nothing special was supposed to happen. One moment the sensors showed empty space. The next moment there were 10,000 ships, each one larger than a city. Each one filled with creatures that knew only one purpose: consume, expand. Repeat. The Dominion had destroyed 12 species in 6,000 years. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They simply arrived, ate everything in their path, and moved on to the next world. No one had ever survived first contact with them. No one had ever pushed them back. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency meeting. Every species sent their best military leaders. The greatest minds of 100 worlds gathered to find a solution. What they found instead was despair. The numbers are clear, the collective's War Master said. They were a tall being with 4 arms and a face full of eyes, and they had spent their entire life studying warfare. We cannot win. The Dominion breeds too fast. They adapt too quickly. For every soldier we kill, they make 100 more. For every weapon we create, they develop a defense. This is not a war we can fight. This is extinction we must prepare for. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the War Master was right. The math did not lie. The projections were perfect. There was no hope. Then a small human woman stood up from her seat at the back of the room. Her name was Admiral Yuki Tanaka. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot and eyes that had seen too much death. She had commanded human fleets for 30 years. She had won battles that should have been impossible. And now she was about to say something that would change the course of history. So what? She said. The War Master turned to look at her. I do not understand the question. You say we cannot win. Fine. What does that have to do with anything? Admiral, perhaps you did not hear me correctly. We have run every simulation. We have considered every strategy. There is no path to victory. The Dominion will destroy us all. It is simply a matter of time. Yuki Tanaka smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that showed teeth, the kind that humans made when they were about to do something very dangerous. I heard you perfectly, she said. You say we cannot win. You may be right, but that does not mean we cannot fight. To what purpose? Fighting will only prolong the suffering, will it? She walked to the center of the room, where a holographic map of the galaxy floated in the air. She pointed at the frontier territories, at the systems that were already falling to the Dominion. Every day we fight is a day people can escape. Every ship we destroy is a ship that cannot chase refugees. Every world we hold is a world where children can grow up a little longer before the end. Commies, you are suggesting we sacrifice soldiers for no strategic gain. I am suggesting we make the Dominion pay for every inch of space they take. I am suggesting we hurt them so badly that they think twice before attacking the next species. I am suggesting we die in ways that matter. Kathmiran watched from the observation gallery, remembering Marcus Chun, remembering the 17 volunteers on the horizon, remembering all the stories of humans who knew better and did it anyway. This is madness, the War Master said. Maybe, but it is human madness. And I promise you, the Dominion has never faced anything like it. Admiral Tanaka presented her strategy. It was terrifying. It called for tactics that no sane species would ever consider. Ships flying directly into Dominion hive cores with their reactors set to explode. Ground forces holding positions until the last soldier fell. Weapons that would poison the operators who fired them. You are asking your people to die, the War Master said. I am asking them to choose how they die. There's a difference. And you believe they will volunteer for this? I know they will. She was right. When the call went out, humans answered. They came from every world, every station, every ship in the fleet. Young and old, soldiers and civilians, people who had everything to live for and people who had nothing left to lose. They came because someone had to. They came because they could make a difference, even if that difference was measured in other people's survival instead of their own. The first battle took place over a small colony, world called New Haven. The Dominion sent 200 ships. The humans had 30. By every calculation, the battle should have been over in minutes. It lasted 3 days. Human pilots flew their fighters into the engines of Dominion cruisers, ejecting at the last second, knowing their escape pods might not be recovered. Human Marines held landing zones until their ammunition ran out, then fought with knives and bare hands. Human engineers set their own reactors to overload, walking calmly toward the enemy, counting down the seconds until everything ended. The Dominion won the battle. They always won, but they had never paid such a price for victory. 3 days of fighting cost them 72 ships and nearly 1 million soldiers. They had expected to lose perhaps a tenth of that. After New Haven, the Dominion paused. For the first time in 6,000 years, they hesitated before their next attack. Their commanders did not understand what had happened. Their tactical systems could not process enemies who seemed to welcome death. And on every human world, on every station and ship, people watched the reports from New Haven and understood what it meant. The Dominion could be hurt. The Dominion could be slowed. Maybe not stopped. Maybe not defeated. But hurt, that was enough. That was everything. Part 4. The war lasted 11 years. 11 years of death and fire and sacrifice. 11 years of humans doing exactly what they had promised to do. They did not win. They could not win. But they fought, and they bled the Dominion with every battle, every skirmish, every desperate last stand. The other species of the Galactic Assembly watched in horror and wonder. They saw human fleets fly into certain death and come out having destroyed 3 times their number. They saw human colonies hold for months against forces that should have crushed them in hours. They saw humans laugh and sing and tell jokes even as the end drew near. And slowly, impossibly, they began to understand. The Dominion was not losing. But the Dominion was not winning the way they should have been. Every system they conquered cost them more than they expected. Every world they took was poisoned or destroyed before they could use it. The humans were not trying to defeat them. The humans were trying to break them. It was working. By the 8th year of the war, the Dominion had lost more soldiers than they had lost in the previous 1,000 years of conquest. Their breeding pools could not keep up with the losses. Their commanders could not adapt to an enemy who refused to follow any rational pattern of behavior. How do you fight someone who is not trying to survive? How do you scare someone who has already accepted death? The final battle came on a cold morning over Earth itself. The Dominion had gathered everything they had left. 10,000 ships descended on humanity's homeworld, determined to end this madness once and for all. The human fleet that rose to meet them was less than a quarter that size. Everyone knew how this would end. Kethviren watched from a safe distance, their ship hidden behind a small moon. They had been observing humans for almost 25 years now. They had seen so much death. They had written so many reports. They thought they understood, finally, what made humans the way they were. They were wrong. The battle was chaos. Human ships flew in patterns that made no sense, sacrificing themselves to protect others, ramming enemy vessels when their weapons failed, fighting until their hulls cracked open and spilled their crews into the void. The Dominion Queen ship descended through the carnage, certain of victory, ready to accept humanity's surrender. That was when James Okonkwo made his choice. He was a pilot, 42 years old, with a daughter named Sarah, who was 7. His fighter had been damaged in the first wave of combat. His weapons were gone. His engines were failing. He should have retreated. He should have ejected and hoped for rescue. He should have done what any rational being would do. Instead, he aimed his broken ship at the Queen ship and pushed his engines to full power. Kethviren watched the sensor readings as Okonkwo's fighter struck the Queen ship's primary neural cluster. They watched as the small craft burrowed deep into the organic vessel, its reactor overloading, its pilot still alive inside. The telemetry showed that James Okonkwo survived the initial impact. He was conscious, burning, for 47 seconds as his ship tore through the enemy's brain. The last transmission from his cockpit was laughter. The Queen ship died. Without their Queen, the Dominion fleet fell into confusion. They had never lost a Queen before. They did not know what to do. The human fleet pressed the attack, and the greatest enemy the galaxy had ever known began to retreat. 3 months later, the war was over. The Dominion was not destroyed, but they were broken. They withdrew to their home systems and did not return. Perhaps they never would. Perhaps they would spend the next 1,000 years trying to understand what had happened to them. Kethviren attended the memorial services on Earth. There were so many of them. So many names carved into stone. So many families left behind. Nearly 8% of humanity's total population had died in the war. It was a terrible number. It was also a number that meant 92% had survived. The ambassador walked among the monuments, reading the names, trying to understand. They found themselves standing in front of a statue of James Okonkwo, frozen in bronze, forever flying toward his final moment. A small human child tugged at Kethviren's wing. She had dark skin and curious eyes, and she looked up at the ambassador without fear. "Did you know my dad?" she asked. Kethviren looked at the statue, looked at the child. "Yes," they said. "He was very brave. Mom says he was very stupid." The child smiled. It was the same smile her father had worn in his final moments, the one Kethviren had seen on the cockpit recording. "She says both things can be true." Kethviren finally understood. That was the true terror of humanity. Not their strength, not their weapons, not even their willingness to die. It was their complete and absolute belief that knowing something was foolish did not make it wrong. That wisdom and intelligence were not the same thing. That sometimes the most rational choice was the one that threw rationality away. They knew better. They knew the odds. They knew the risks. They understood death better than almost any species in the galaxy because their lives were so short and so fragile. They had no illusions about what they were doing, and they did it anyway. That was why they were still here, standing on their homeworld, mourning their dead and celebrating their survival. That was why the Dominion was hiding in the dark corners of space, afraid to return. That was why the Galactic Assembly would never look at humans the same way again, because they knew better, and they did it anyway. And that made all the difference.